Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our February 11th Convention of States Indiana live broadcast. I want to welcome everyone to the broadcast tonight. The purpose, again, for our broadcast of this nature is to try and reach those of you in the state of Indiana and beyond, but primarily those of you in the state of Indiana that may want to learn more about Convention of States, or perhaps you're already involved and want to learn more. But that's the purpose of our broadcast. I'm going to bring myself into the screen here so you can see me. My name's Dale Parrish. I'm the state director for Convention of States here in Indiana. And just once again, a little bit about the structure of our broadcast. We have basically two segments to the broadcast. The first segment will be, we will focus on the basics of Convention of States. And when I say the basics, these are the basic tenets that everyone in Convention of States, not only Indiana, but nationally, these are the tenets that we believe in, that our organization is based upon. So we'll go through the basics then of Convention of States in our first segment. In our second segment, I've been bringing on one of our leaders in the state of Indiana, and tonight we'll be bringing on another leader, Mr. Thomas Shultz, who is another one of our region captains in the state of Indiana. He's in Region 6. So we'll talk with Thomas and get an idea of what all he does as a region captain, and find out a little bit about his story. We always want our guests to be telling us their story. That's something we do in Convention of States, so that everybody has a story as to how they got into Convention of States. And I'm trying to get this PowerPoint. There we go. So we'll find out from Thomas what his story is, and we'll be talking to him in the second segment. So let's get started then with our first segment, and that's the basics of Convention of States. Now, first of all, a little background information. We have some resources available to us here in Indiana, as well as nationally. The main resource, and you'll hear us refer to this from time to time, and that's the national website, conventionofstates.com. Like I said, you'll hear us refer to this website frequently. It contains a wealth of information, and it's very, very integral to the operation of Convention of States. Embedded in the website is our state web page. That's conventionofstates.com/Indiana. Then on social media, we're pretty well covered in social media. We're on Facebook. We have Facebook page, Convention of States Indiana. As a matter of fact, our broadcast this evening is coming to you through that Facebook page. So Convention of States Indiana. YouTube channel, COS Indiana. That's still somewhat under construction. We're trying to build that. We have a lot of educational materials, presentations on the channel. As a matter of fact, we're in the process of putting these broadcasts on that YouTube channel. So you'll be able to stay on top of our broadcast, or take a look at maybe prior broadcasts that maybe you missed. We also plan on having links to a podcast that our legislative liaison and co-state director Paul Phillips produces. Some very, very interesting podcasts. So we want to encourage you to take a look at those too. That's our YouTube channel, COS Indiana. We're on Twitter, hashtag COS Indiana, and we now have a presence on Instagram. All right. Let's start off with just our vision statement here in Indiana. This is what we're striving to achieve here in the state, and that is our vision is to build a Hoosier grassroots community of citizens and legislators dedicated to the constitutional concept of self-governance. So that's what we're striving to achieve here in Indiana. Now, let me give you a few numbers as to how we're doing here in Indiana. In 2018, we just surpassed the 30,000 supporter mark, and we've been growing tremendously here in Indiana. We've been growing at an annual rate of about 40%. So given that growth rate, we're looking at 2019, we're looking to attain the 40,000 supporter mark. So that's something we're going to strive to achieve here in 2019. Out of those supporters, we have about 2,500 or so individuals that have volunteered or have said that they would be available if we needed them here in the state, 2,500. Leadership, we have about 30-some individuals in leadership positions here in the state of Indiana. We're always looking for individuals willing to step forward and take on a leadership role. If you have any interest in that, please, here's that website again, please go to conventionofstates.com and click on the menu selection, Take Action. Scroll down and look at the different positions that we have available. If any position is of interest to you, open it up, read more about it, and make application if it's still interesting to you. You're not obligated in any way here, but make application, and that will, your name will then pop up, and one of us will be in contact with you to further discuss your interest in that particular position. So I would encourage you, if you have any interest in getting into leadership, please go to the website, conventionofstates.com, click on Take Action, and go down and look at the different positions. All right, let's get into the actual basics now. There are 3 areas that comprise the basics of Convention of States: the problem, the solution, and the plan. Okay, let's look at the problem. Briefly stated, the problem is that our government's out of control. Out of control in that our elected officials lack the will and the courage to address certain basic structural issues in our government. Now, we're not blaming any one particular party. Both parties have contributed to this problem, to this situation. And it's been going on for decades. It's not something that just recently happened. This has been going on for decades. Like I said, the lack of will and courage to make the changes necessary to address these areas. In the problem, we see mainly 3 abuses by the federal government. And we're not going to take, we can't go into detail on these tonight. I'm sure you're probably aware of these, but just briefly stated, the first one has to do with the debt, our debt issue in this country. We're approaching, may already be there, $22 trillion, and very little, if anything, is being done to address that problem. So that's an area that we think definitely needs to be addressed. Second area has to do with the administrative state and the regulatory crisis that we have in this country. You know, the administrative state is considered by many the 4th branch of government. So much more needs to be done. I know the current administration is eliminating some regulations, but much more needs to be done in that area, and much more needs to be done in the area of controlling the individuals that create these regulations. The third area has to do with the sharing of power between the federal government and the states. This is tilted toward the federal government significantly. This, we believe, has a lot to do with career politicians. That is the third area where we think there is an abuse of the federal government going on. Now, the solution, and this is very important because the solution is what Convention of States is all about. Article 5 of our Constitution provides two methods of amending the Constitution. And we're going to briefly touch on each of those methods here. One method has been used, and I'm sure you are familiar with that method, but the second method has not been used, and that's what we're all about. So let's take a look at these two methods. The first method of amending the Constitution is, of course, when 2/3 of Congress proposes an amendment or amendments, and then those proposals have to go through the state legislatures for ratification. And it requires, for ratification, requires 3/4 of the state legislatures, or 38 states, to ratify any proposed amendment or amendments before they can become amendments to the Constitution. All right, that's the first method. The second method, the one we're all about, and we're not making this up, folks. This is in Article 5 of the Constitution. The second method is where 2/3 of the state legislatures, which would be 34 states, call for a convention of states to be held for the purpose of amending the Constitution. And that means 34 states, a minimum, at least 34 states have to apply for this convention to take place. Any proposed amendments or amendments that would come out of the convention would then have to go through the same ratification process as any proposed amendment under the first method. Once again, 3/4 of the state legislatures, or 38 states, would have to ratify any proposed amendment that would come out of the Convention of States. This is what we're trying to accomplish. And we're not trying to accomplish just one convention. We want this to be a recurring event. All right? So that's what we're all about in Convention of States. Now, our plan involves two parts. The first part is this application strategy. You know, you heard me mention that 34 states have to apply to hold this convention. Well, those applications all need to be the same. So what we have done is we have literally structured the application form and format that we want to get 34 states to utilize. And that application format calls for 3 areas: fiscal restraints, limiting the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and term limits. Those are the 3 areas that we want a convention of states to be held in order to propose amendments to address those 3 areas. Now, the other part of our plan, of course, is mobilizing the grassroots. And when I say the grassroots, I'm talking about you and me. Mobilizing the grassroots to interact with our state legislators to bring this about, because it's the states that have to make application for this convention to take place. Now, Convention of States, we're in all 50 states. We're growing. We have, as I mentioned earlier, in Indiana, we've just surpassed 30,000. We have something like 3.8 million supporters across the country. So, like I said, we're now in all 50 states, so we are growing, and we would certainly welcome your involvement in Convention of States here in Indiana. All right, let me get back then to the screen here, and let me send my PowerPoint away. And I'm going to bring on now our guest for this evening. And once again, I'm bringing on Mr. Thomas Shultz. Hello, Thomas.
Hello, Paul.
You hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you're loud and clear. Well, Thomas, thank you for coming on tonight. Thomas is a new region captain, as a matter of fact. And Thomas has just taken over Region 6. And we got a little map here, but we'll show that when we get to that point. I wanted you, Thomas, like every other guest that we've had on, to tell us your Convention of States story and how you got involved in Convention of States. All right?
Okay. Before I joined Convention of States, I was voicing my opinion in letters to Congress and to the State House. Sometimes I would get an answer. I get a letter or a phone call. But I felt like nobody was doing anything, or my voice was not loud enough. So one night I was on Facebook posting some of my ideas, and a side banner happened to catch my eye. It was the Convention of States banner. And they wanted the same thing I wanted: control of government spending, term limits, and limited the jurisdiction of the federal government. So that night I joined, and that was the 26th of December, 2013. And the one voice became many.
Cool. Okay. 2013, you say?
Yeah, well, that's what the record shows.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Well, as we said, Thomas is a region captain for Region 6. Let me see if I can bring this map into play here. And Thomas, why don't you, I'm going to put the map up there. And I don't know if people can see this very well, but it's the only thing we have. Kind of give us an idea what geographic area Region 6 covers.
Well, Region 6 in Muncie is the northwestern part of the region. And we have Richmond, which is the easternmost city. And we have Columbus, which I believe is the most western city. And we have Charlestown way down towards the river, which would be the most southern city in the region. And then we have Lawrenceburg, which is probably the most southeastern city.
Okay. So you go over to the Ohio state line then, right?
Oh, yeah. I live a mile and a half, 2 miles away from it.
Oh, you do? Really? That close to the Ohio line?
I live right here just west of Richmond.
Okay. All right. Okay. So you've got your region geographically covers actually a pretty good amount of territory there.
Yes, there's actually 12 House districts in the region.
12 districts? Okay.
12 districts.
Yeah, for those of you listening in, Convention of States is organized around House districts. So we have 100 of those in the state of Indiana, and each region that we have can really vary from 8 districts up to 15. And Thomas, you just said you had 12 districts in your region, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Okay. Enough for the map then. And so now tell us, of course, district captains, that's what we're looking for a lot. Tell us your situation on district captains in your region.
Out of the 12 districts, which are supposed to have one district captain for each district, I have one.
One, okay.
One.
Okay.
And he's down in the southeastern part of the state, in House District 68.
Okay.
And
so tell me when and I think we've covered this in previous broadcasts too when we're talking to region captains. This is a main responsibility as a region captain, right? Is to recruit district captains. So what kind of individual are you looking for a district captain?
Oh, for a district captain, I get one thing. A district captain is also a leadership pro, and he's got to be able to stir up his volunteers that underneath him. He's going to have people and supporters underneath him, so he needs to be able to motivate them, just like I need to be able to motivate him
or her.
Or her. That's right.
Okay.
That he needs to be able to gather signatures, and he needs to be able, as I will repeat this, be able to must get his grassroots base basically involved in what's going on around him, around them, whether it's at the town hall, city councils, anywhere, even at the state house. They must get involved.
And that's what we mean by self-governance, isn't it?
That's right.
And that can take the form of many different positions or venues or getting involved. That's the grassroots, mobilizing the grassroots. Now, tell us, you got 12 districts. How many people on average are in a district in your region? Have you ever taken the time to figure that out?
How many people, you mean population wise?
Yeah. Or how many supporters?
On the average, there is a total, something like, for each district, there's between 50 to 300.
Okay, yeah.
I can't give you an average if I wanted to.
Yeah, I think you're right. The districts can vary in population, are in the number of supporters involved. Probably 300 or so is probably a pretty.
But the region has right now something like over 3,000 petition signers.
Do you? Okay. All right. Okay. Well, 3,000. You got 12 districts. So do a little fancy dancy. That's about average about 250. I mean, those are going to vary, but on average about 250 supporters per district. So the district captain, that's an important job, isn't it?
Yes.
And that's what we're looking for and trying to recruit. And now you were a district captain, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's typically seems to be the way our region captains come up. I was a district captain when I first started, and then became a region captain, and then was asked to be state director. But that seems to be a career path, I should say, in convention of states. Now let's talk a little bit about. I know we wanted to talk a little bit about the urgency of our situation. You want to touch on that?
Oh yeah, the house is on fire. We need many volunteers to help put out the blaze. We need all of you.
Okay. All right. All right. All right. Well, I know. Have you got some candidates lined up? Don't say their names, but do you have some candidates lined up for district captain?
Hopefully I have one.
One so far?
One so far.
All right. Now, we might mention that to become a potential candidate for a district captain, if you when you sign the petition, if you choose the box that says volunteer, that will catch Thomas's eye, and he will call you and talk to you about maybe becoming a district captain or some other fill some other role. Am I right?
That's right.
Okay. All right. Well, Thomas, thank you very much for coming on tonight. Again, Thomas Shultz, region captain in Region 6 here in the state of Indiana. Thanks, Thomas, for coming on. You have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, let's let me get rid of that urgency there, and let's wrap things up here this evening. I want to thank everyone for tuning in and being with us this evening. Our next broadcast will be on again on Monday evening, 7 o'clock. Each broadcast is on a Monday evening, 7 o'clock, and we're going to have another one of our region captains on, Clint Wiggins. And Clint is the region captain up in Region 1, up in the northwestern corner of the state of Indiana. So we're going to have him on February 18th. And I just want to start letting people know that February 25th will be the last broadcast for a couple weeks. I'm going to have some surgery, so I will be we won't be broadcasting for a couple weeks, and that will so February 25th will be the last broadcast, and we'll then be back on hopefully on March 18th. So I just want to let you know about that ahead of time. And I always like to close with a particular quote that I really enjoy a great deal. And this has to do with who's going to decide. Our president, Mark Meckler for Convention of States, this is one of his famous quotes. I may be paraphrasing here, but it's basically, there's a fundamental question facing our country, and that question is not what should we do. The question is, who will decide? Do we want someone in Washington, D.C. making these decisions, or do we want to make these decisions? And I think if you're in tune with what we're trying to do, the answer is we want to be making these decisions at the state level. and not in Washington, D.C. all the time. So once again, everyone, thank you for tuning in tonight. And we'll be back with you again next Monday evening, same time, 7 o'clock, February 18th. We will see you then. Good night, everyone.